Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to do an overview of the book, the Codex of Erde. Now, I'm calling it an overview as opposed to a full review because, I'll be honest, I did not read this book cover to cover. It isn't a particularly huge book, but there's a lot of this book which is just huge blocks of print. And a lot of it is fluff. And frankly, I don't have a great deal of use for a lot of fluff. I prefer a lot of mechanics. I prefer crunchy things that I can work with, and that I can strip what fluff there is off, or embellish it, or alter it, or or just ignore it completely. I picked this up fairly cheap on Amazon. I don't actually remember how much I paid for it. I'll see if I can remember to post a link in the show notes here. So I'm not really concerned about the investment I put into it. Like I said, I'm a collector, so people can see the big shelf behind me. That's just the box sets, folks. I've got 60 feet of shelf space dedicated to gaming books and gaming box sets. But I get the impression from looking at the mechanics, that this was the translation of either a basic D&D campaign or an advanced D&D campaign into the 3.0 rules in 2001, which is the date of publication. So it might have actually been right after publication of the game itself in 2000, because, things take time to actually get published. Because it has a lot of things in it that make me think of AD&D or basic D&D. Now, I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown here. I'll just use the table of contents. Here we go. Now, first we have the history of the world, and there's 50 solid pages of the history of the world, and almost all of it is a story of creation, of the actual gods, what they did, how they did it, which races were made first, and like the days before days, the song of the dwarf, the goblin dwarf wars, of the age of man, the age of heroes, the coming of the dark, the age of winter dark, the winter dark wars, the long days of the world. That's a lot of text, and frankly, I was never going to read this. I got a gist of it by skimming things here and there, but it just wasn't something I was interested in reading. Then we have some pages of the cosmos and the gods. Then we get into the actual gist of the kingdoms themselves. And then a lot of this is inspired by Germany and France in the Middle Ages. So there are some real-world elements to it. So if you would like that kind of thing, this may be something you're interested in. But there's like 70-something pages of this, of kingdoms described to the reader. And it's just huge amounts of text. I was just not interested in reading it at all, and I feel a little bad about that, but it just didn't trip my triggers. Then we get into the players section of Erde, or Erde, or Erde. It could be where either. I'm not really sure which way it's pronounced. And they talk about the races and the languages. They talk about the classes, orders, and guilds, equipment and economy rather, specific spells to the world. Then we have a DM section, which is about some magic items, which actually I looked at a few of those, they weren't too bad. And monsters, the monsters just weren't memorable to me at all. A chronology at the end, which is always nice. Chronologies are always good to have, regardless. And then some maps at the end, and the maps weren't too bad. Now, there's two things I want to mention. One is the art, and some of this art in here was very good. Let me show you the cover here for you. Some was very good. I'd even say evocative. Some of it was very serviceable, and some of it was really subpar. It was a very mixed bag. That's an effect that affects me personally because I like good art. It's almost all of this. All the art inside the book is black and white, so I like that at least. But I have to tell you, it negatively affects my opinion when there's bad art in a book. It just bugs me. It can really turn me off from a product. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention about this, I mentioned two things, is they have a race in here of the High Elves. Now, the High Elves are presented to the viewer, to the reader, as a 20-level racial class. You have to play the class of High Elf. You're only allowed to have, you're only allowed to be a good of alignment. You get a die 8 for your hit points, which is not too bad. You're allowed all simple, all martial weapons, all forms of armor, and shields. Okay? You are also allowed arcane magic up through 9th level spells. Intelligence is your spell generating stat, and you have an arcane spell failure discount of 15%. So anything so that knocks 15% off the arcane spell failure of any armor. So essentially, these guys are better than clerics, but arcane. So they don't have to worry about appeasing a god. They just cast magic whenever they want to. Now again, I have said many times, I do not bow too deeply to the altar of balance. This is a broken class. Absolutely nuts. I read this, I had to check it a couple of times. I'm like, is this actually what I'm seeing on the page? So I don't know how anyone thought this was a good idea. I don't. The other races in the book are presented with an unusual stat bonus and penalty structure. Most of D&D is 3.5, 3.0 was +2, -2. That was pretty much the standard. Pathfinder does 2 + 2, 1 -2. This setting presents you with 3 adjustments. 2 of them are going to be +1 or -1, and one of them will be the balance, +2 or -2. I find that strange, and it makes me think of why this game is a port over from basic or advanced D&D and not something that was written originally for the 3.0 system. And surprisingly, it was put out the year after the system was released. And this is a lot of work here. There's huge amounts of work, so I would not be surprised if it was not written within that time span. If you're looking for a different campaign setting and you like lots of fluff and you like lots of explanations and huge amounts of text, this may be the book for you. If, however, you're like me who wants crunch and lots of it with only a little bit of fluff, this is something you should probably not get. So it gets a mixed bag for me, and I do question why some of the decisions were made, like why the heck have a 20-level racial class that makes you better than any other class I can think of.